Welcome back, and joining me now to discuss this further is Professor Vehbi Baisan, a professor at Ibn Khaldun University. Professor, thank you very much once again
Pleasure.
for being a part of this episode. It's indeed a tragic day today. So please tell us, how did it all begin?
Well, actually, that was a really building tension in the area. This is to say that actually it is when these nation states started building their own identity, whereas they historically created the other. So in this case, the other was actually someone did not resemble them. For example, someone that did not share the same religious faith or the language or lifestyle, etc. So when you look at it from that perspective, it is actually a tragic event where the Serbs did not really, in a way, hesitate to, I think it's fair to say, to exterminate certain group of people sharing same values from clearing them entirely from the area. Because for them, for Serbs, these people are just simply don't need to be there anyway. So you can see that it's in their mind, it has all been justified.
So when you say the Serbs did not want these people to be there anyway, was it because these people were Muslims?
Well, not only Muslims, but actually it has historic background. Now, the Belgrade was controlled by Ottoman Empire in 1521. So this is the date, if we keep in mind, at the time of Sultan Süleyman, the Kanuni, who, kind of really represent the peak of Ottoman power. So that reached all the way to Belgrade, to Serbia. And Serbs, actually, although Ottomans lost control in 1739, in the subsequent century, Serbs built their identity on distinguishing themselves from the Muslims or Turks, you see. So that's the historic background. So therefore, for them, killing these people seems actually really like something that they should be doing. Therefore, in the very eyes of Europeans, in the heart of Europe, and when actually United Nations declared 2 years earlier that the area is safe and under the protection of Dutch armed forces, all these people got killed. So you see, like, it has so brutal dimensions what had happened to these people, because they were invited to go back to the region as UN, United Nations, told them that it's safe to go. And then United Nations commissioned Dutch troops to back up or protect these people, you see. So women and children, they went back there to continue their lives, whatever's left of their life of there. And all this happened in the very eyes of these people. So that makes it really more tragic.
As you said, that the Dutch forces were supposed to be acting as international peacekeepers, and they miserably failed.
I think failed wouldn't really necessarily capable of explaining it. They simply handed all these people to the butchers, put it that way. Because they, the people, when they realized all these armed groups, militia coming, and they felt that they will be killed, so they went to Dutch to protect them. Dutch closed their gates and didn't let these people in.
That's indeed very
Absolutely,
tragic.
Yes. So that's, when you look at it, it's not like a simple failure where, poor army, poor soldiers did try, or there's no try, nothing. Just simply, in a sense that they received harsh criticism internationally, that they, in a sense, cooperated by simply turning down these women and children, you see. So, and they were rounded in groups, 200 or 300 at a time, and they all got killed. So when you look at it, they did it so professionally and so that they have no remorse. That's why perhaps we talk later, but those who committed these crimes, these vicious crimes, received heroes' welcome in the country.
Even
So
to this day, there are some people who are in denial, complete denial, if this genocide even took place or not. But we'll definitely get to that. First, let's talk about the event itself. Now, Professor, on the 11th of July, 1995, 2,000 people were killed alone on that day. Then the hunt continued, I believe, in the forest.
Yeah, they continued.
And in that hunt, around 6,000 Bosnian Muslims were killed.
The actual number is not known, but somehow they came up with a number. That's United Nations report. It's 8,372. And in fact, I'm closely following the forensic investigations still continue. Can you believe this? This is since crimes committed in 1995, and the forensic work still going on. It's meticulous. The people, experts, actually, they're going, digging out the bones and trying to identify them, because it is, what happens is that all these people got killed, and a lot of disappearances as well. We should add into that. But those who left behind, in their mind, these people cannot be dead because there is no body found. So therefore, there's a meticulous work going on to identify. But at times, it's not really that easy to do.
All right. Now, moving on, as I spoke about the denial, the genocide is vehemently denied by politicians, including Milorad Dodik, the current chairman and Serb member of Bosnia's tripartite presidency, and by Serbian Prime Minister Ana Brnabić. Why do you think that is?
Well, actually, that's in the first instance the reaction that these kind of nations would kind of portray falsely, because say, no, we wouldn't do something like this, or our men wouldn't do it. No, they did it, you see. So if you do not come in terms with this, I'm talking about Serbians, you can never move on forward. I mean, yes, these crimes you committed. I mean, you committed because you are Serbs, and you kind of have certain faith systems, and those victimized are different people from you. So you just wanted to ethnically clean them. It's ethnic cleansing, basically, in the area. So it's a process. But whatever happened, we can criticize Europe for their mistakes or errors, whatever. But thereafter, they really followed it up, and they really tried to bring them on trial in international courts. Kind of really went after these people. So it is a tragedy both sides, because we cannot really say that all entire Serbs are actually criminals. And no, there are also good people. But the nation, the Serbs, got to come in terms with it. This past is a shame, and it will be always hanging on back of their head. And unless they discuss it freely and acknowledge what had happened, this doesn't mean they're taking the responsibility of these killers. These are killers, simple killers. They did it what they did, and so they should also have an empathy of who left behind. And
the least that can be done is to condemn what happened.
Absolutely, they have to. So as long as a nation, they don't come in terms with it, they will be facing a lot of difficulties.
Now, Professor, let me also ask you, to this day, many Bosnian Muslims live in Bosnia. Now, if some of these politicians maintain such a stance on this tragic incident, don't you think it also poses a danger to the Muslims who are still living in Bosnia?
Well, absolutely, absolutely. But actually, we should also remember that what we study in our kind of 20th century history, what we call is the Balkan Wars, which in fact the terminology is kind of misrepresenting. There was no wars. Wars happened between armies, whereas during that time, hundreds and thousands of people were killed, and they were forced to leave the area, and simply because they were Muslims and Turks. because, you know, Ottoman Empire collapsed and lost control in the Balkans, and this is what had happened. So, and now, almost 100 years later, or whatever, 90 or 80 years later, you find out that actually these crimes went in a relatively peaceful area, region, and time, and they committed these crimes. But actually, what would probably help better understand what had happened is this a tragic quote I want to make, if with your permission. This is a little child talking to his mom before he was executed. He said, "Mom, they would kill the little children with little bullets, isn't it? With small bullets." So look at this. I mean, that tells us the whole...
We can only imagine what the mother
so imagine what they went through
at that time.
That this little kid, before being executed, saying that they would use small bullets for small kids. So that is what kind of left behind this one sentence to help us understand the tragedies, because we can only like speculate what had happened. What all these people went through, what had happened, is extremely traumatic, and this trauma still continue today, because we are talking about those who were killed, and we still don't know what happened to those who disappeared. We can only assume what had happened, but also thousands of people's lives shattered because they were tortured, they lost their limbs, they injured, they lost their family. You see, so like, it's not only the death and killing. Also, we should also talk about the rapes and all the rest. I mean, it's like, it was a brutal kind of operation.
If they were tortured, raped, as you mentioned, they lost their limbs. So this tragic day is affecting the families of the victims to this day.
Absolutely, absolutely. They will carry this all their lives. And also, not to mention, I mean, as I said, we cannot really blame all Serbs for this, for what had happened. I'm sure they're also, you know, upset about it, many people, and they don't want to carry the blame of all these killings, murderous acts. They don't want to carry the blame. But it seems now in Serbia they don't have that climate to kind of move forward and just acknowledge what they did, and maybe for better future, because this area is unique, and all these different people will live together. They have to live together, because the Ottoman Empire created this environment where, respecting all the individuality of societies, and they probably gave the best example of living together culture. You see, if they wanted to, I'm sure they didn't want, they could have executed and killed everyone in Belgrade when they kind of captured that town, but they didn't, you see. Therefore, in 1521, I said it's like 16th century, you're talking about a couple of hundreds of years, Serbs remained what they were, with their own identity, with their own religion, and with their social values. Ottoman Empire did not touch that. So therefore, I think when you look at it from that perspective, victimizing Muslims, those who created, or their ancestors created the environment of living together culture, got to be again actualized.
True. I'm still thinking about the quote you just told me about, the conversation between the mother and the child. And I believe it needs a lot of emphasis here as well, that when I was explaining the facts about this incident, I did not emphasize enough on how many children were killed, how many Muslim boys were killed in this genocide. So keeping this in mind, Professor Wehbi Baisan, why do you think this incident is not getting enough attention, especially from the Western media?
Well, there are many reasons, obviously. One is that if you don't talk about it, if you ignore, then it may, go away. But actually, I emphasize and focusing on Serbs, but actually if not equally, European countries also should bear the responsibility for what happened there, because it's in the heart of Europe. You would think, imagine that these things happen in always faraway places. You see, it never happened in the heart of civilization, but yet it had happened. And we're talking about a Europe where they had this World War I, lasted 4 years, killing millions of people, 15 million. I mean, incredible number. And then they had a second World War experience. But before that, they experienced also another horrific event, the Holocaust, you see. So they're like, it happened in the very heart of Europe. Again, a certain group of people were kind of targeted. And then, yes, okay, we have a unique name for it, Holocaust, but it doesn't really minimize what had happened to the Bosnians in Srebrenica. So there is a shared responsibility on Europeans as well. So they have to clear their conscience too, because, I mean, they didn't do enough until, I remember at that time it was US President Clinton moved forward and brought in the warplanes and started really kind of minimizing activities of Serbs, and they got control of the area. But there, for example, Karadzic, who later captured and died in prison and were on trial in the World Criminal Court. So over there, on his explanations, although, or confessions rather, but you can see he and the other commanders, I mean, unfortunately, they don't have any remorse. They don't have any regret for what they did. They think that it was a duty, it was a job to be done, and without taking into consideration how much scars it would leave behind for the future generations.
And we can't change what happened in history, but we can at least remember and pray for the ones who lost their lives in this brutal genocide. Professor, my last question to you: what can we as human beings learn from this?
Well, a lot, because we should remember first that the immediate victims of a war, any conflict, are the small children. At a very early age, learn what a bullet is and expecting a small one. Look at the interpretation of it. That's why it's sad. Being far away by kilometer in length, distance, does not really kind of say that we should ignore what had happened. We should learn that it's a tragic event, and first victims are children and women, and really innocent. They're not really carrying any guns and weapons to stand against any movement. And I think, therefore, these kind of massacres, genocides, Holocaust should be studied better, so that the future generations wouldn't at all even think about you know, what happened, and possibly even thinking at all, 1 in a million, to commit such crimes. Because killing someone is as in our culture says in religion, killing one person is killing the humanity. So it is tragic, indeed.
Indeed. Professor Wehbi Baysan, thank you very much for participating in today's program. Like the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said that the Srebrenica genocide, which claimed the lives of more than 8,000 innocent Muslims, will never be forgotten. Let's hope and pray that such incidents and genocides do not ever take place against any religion or sect or race. On that note, I'm Jafar Hasnan. See you next week.